The transfer portal finale, if you will, is upon us. Today, Tuesday, April 30th, 2024, as of 11:59 p.m., that is the last chance you have if you want to transfer, graduate or otherwise, to submit your paperwork. Now, it's worth noting, you do not have to commit prior to this deadline, so you can just jump in there and hang out for a while before you have to make a decision. Also worth noting, a guy might submit his paperwork at 11:58, 11:59, and his name may not pop up in the portal until 48 hours after that. So don't be surprised if we see some names pop up on Thursday and we thought we were out of the woods with the portal. No. Compliance, I believe, has 48 hours to get their players into the portal officially. So with that being said, what's the latest movement? Well, over the weekend, Dylan Edwards, running back from Colorado, transferred or committed to transfer to Kansas State. This is a big get for the folks out there in the Little Apple in Manhattan, Kansas. This is a dude who was committed to you out of high school. This is a dude who is from the state of Kansas, averaged 5.5 yards a touch at Colorado a season ago. He was a weapon in the pass game, catching 36 passes. I cannot wait to watch Avery Johnson, a former youth football teammate of Dylan Edwards, worth mentioning. I cannot wait to watch them run the read option together. Because when defenses have to key on Dylan Edwards and then also worry about the legs of Avery Johnson, it's just going to be so dynamic. If nothing else, when we get the College Football 25 video game, that's going to be unstoppable, I promise you. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch that out there in Manhattan, Kansas this upcoming season. I alluded to Miami at the top of this live show. We're going to talk about them a little bit more later in this show, but they got two big fish offensively. Damian Martinez, the top player in the transfer portal, running back from Oregon State, ran for over 2,000 yards his 2 years in Corvallis, and wide receiver Sam Brown from Houston. Let's start with Martinez. He changes the game plan that defenses have to utilize when they play against Miami. It used to be, or your thought used to be, I would have to imagine, if you were a defense prepping for the Canes, it was, okay, well, they got Cam Ward, so we're going to really make sure that we key on the pass. Well, you can't do that anymore with Damian Martinez. The way that he runs the football, the way that he gets north and south, he's going to demand attention in the box. So the bottom line here is you make your offense more balanced, and you have, I think, more opportunities to fight different styles offensively. If you want to compete for the highest prizes in college football, whether it be conference titles or college football playoff berths or even national championships, you have to be able to win ugly at some point. Whether it's bad weather, whether your quarterback has an off day, you have to be able to run the football. Adding Damian Martinez into that lineup, going to help with that effort. Speaking of Sam Brown, though, the wide receiver they got from Houston, he is the kind of weapon I think this offense was missing. Like, he's that key ingredient you were hoping to land through the portal. He transfers from Houston, as I mentioned, 62 catches for 800-plus yards a season ago. The thing I love about him, he's explosive. He's the kind of guy that can take the top off a defense, can keep that safety playing a little bit deeper than maybe he typically would if Sam Brown weren't on the roster for Miami. He averaged 13 yards a reception last year. For context, Miami averaged 7.5 yards a pass last season. You change the quarterback, you add some weapons. I think you're going to see a little bit more explosivity in Coral Gables this upcoming season. So two big gets for them offensively. And that was not all they did this past weekend, just so we're on the same page. But those are the two that I want to make sure we highlight. So we had some commitments. We also had some names pop up here towards the finish line of this transfer portal season. Peyton Woodyard is a name that you probably know if you follow recruiting, because he was a 4-star safety out of St. John Bosco High School in Southern California who committed to Alabama. Now, he committed to Nick Saban's Alabama. Nick Saban retires. Peyton Woodyard goes through spring football, receives an award for being one of the most improved freshmen from spring football, so hat tip to him. He is now back in the portal. We're going to get some more intel from Pete Nakos when he joins the show here in just a little bit, but it's worth noting. Peyton Woodyard flipped his commitment from Georgia to Alabama during his recruitment. So I think conventional wisdom, you go, okay, well, is he going to go to Georgia? I suppose he could, but remember, per SEC rules, he cannot transfer to an SEC school and be eligible immediately. So that feels like it's a bit of a long shot, if you ask me. The school that we are hearing rumblings about the most is Oregon. That would make a lot of sense. Get back to the West Coast. You're closer to home. You're also more than likely able to compete a little bit earlier for some playing time. So we'll see what happens there, but that would make a whole lot of sense. Peyton Woodyard, high-profile recruit from the 2024 class, is back on the market. We'll see where he ends up. Speaking of high-profile recruits, Cormani McClain was a 5-star when he came out of high school. Cormani McClain at one point in time was fielding offers from SEC schools. He was committed to Miami. He ends up flipping at the last minute and going out to Colorado. Now he's back in the portal, and he doesn't have the same amount of suitors as he had at one point in time. There's no real news for Cormani McClain when it comes to schools in the mix. Utah was mentioned to Steve Wiltfong, but as Pete Nakos reported, they don't have a scholarship right now, so I don't know how that would work. But the thing that I think we got to watch here most closely, again, the relational aspect for Cormani McClain, USF, I think is still that school that would make the most sense. You're with someone who you recruited, or who recruited you rather, to Miami, and DeMarcus Van Dyke, who's now coaching DBs out there at USF. Worth noting, he recently signed NIL representation. So how that impacts his recruitment, we're going to find out. But Cormani McClain, at this point, no news is bad news. Like, the options, you have to believe, for the players in the portal right now, you probably have a good gauge as to what they were when you jumped in there. And as you get further and further into this process, I suppose that some spots could become available as certain schools lose guys at the last minute. But I have to believe, like, you kind of know what you're dealing with right now if you're Cormani McClain in terms of what schools you can pick from. So we'll ask Pete Nakos a little bit more about him when he joins the show in a minute. But the latest with him is he has signed NIL representation, and we'll see what happens there. Quick check-in on the two, in my opinion, most valuable players in the transfer portal right now, and that is the dynamic duo of Michigan State defensive lineman Simeon Barrow, who is 6'3", 290 pounds, and Derek Harmon, who is 6'5", 320 pounds. Dudes like that do not grow on trees, transfer portal or otherwise, so they're obviously hot commodities. Simeon Barrow visited Miami, also visited LSU and Missouri. I think he is more important, in my opinion, to Miami. He has that missing piece feel to me. If he were to go to Coral Gables and help be a presence in the middle of that defense, LSU, if he were to go there, he would kind of be a piece that you're helping restock the cupboard for them. It's no secret they were very, very bad last year defensively, were the Tigers, kind of trying to recapture that spirit of what they are defensively under new management out there with Blake Baker running the show. Have to believe it wouldn't hurt adding a Simeon Barrow. So those are the three that we're watching right now for him. Miami, LSU, and then Missouri, as I mentioned, also got a visit. For Derek Harmon, he originally was going to visit Miami. He visited USC. He visited Colorado. He said, you know what, actually, I'm good on that visit to Miami. So take of that as you will. From where I'm sitting, if you liked your visit to Colorado or you liked your visit to USC and you feel good enough about those options to where you don't need to go see somewhere else, I feel like that probably bodes well for both of those schools. The Colorado spring game, it sounded like was just a movie with Ryan Garcia there, Lil Wayne there. Like, I'm just saying, nobody does visits like Colorado when it comes to getting them on campus. Don't think that hurt things. Also worth noting, Derek Harmon is no stranger to the portal. He jumped in the portal last winter, or this most recent cycle, I suppose. So this most recent winter. Bottom line, he's also heard from schools like Ohio State. I believe Oregon was in the mix for him as well. Would not shock me if there was a little bit of a backdoor operation there and maybe somewhere he visited during the winter, doesn't need to visit, gets on the phone, has a conversation that he likes what he hears, things work out, he goes to one of those schools. But Derek Harmon and Simeon Barrow, again, I think the two most valuable players in the transfer portal for my money right now. Bit of a surprise coming within the last couple of days. Chief Borders, Nebraska edge, 6'4", 245 pounds, was a guy that had gotten rave reviews during the spring from Matt Rule and that staff out there. Didn't play a ton this past season, but was going to be counted on this upcoming season to be a guy for you off the edge for Nebraska. He has since hit the portal. Now, Chief Borders transferred from Florida to Nebraska originally. I'm curious to see what his market is. Feels like the SEC could be in the mix for him. Premium position, edge rushers at this point in time. The demand is very high and the supply is pretty low. So a guy like Chief Borders with his abilities, you have to believe will have his fair share of suitors. Surprising for the folks in Nebraska. I have to believe that because he was going to be someone who played this upcoming season. Couple of quick notes here on the quarterback position. You got some commitments. Jakari Brown, transfer quarterback, was at Miami for a period of time. He's headed to UCF. I love the fit for him. Sit behind KJ Jefferson for a year. You got a couple of years of eligibility. Then go do your thing in a system that I think plays to his skill set. I love that. Jacoby Criswell is transferring back to UNC. He was originally playing ball there, transferred to Arkansas. Now he's heading back to Chapel Hill. Same thing with him that I appreciate about Jakari Brown. I appreciate for Jacoby Criswell. Sit for a season. get to learn the ropes a little bit more and be under a offensive coordinator and quarterback coach in Chip Lindsey, who's got a pretty strong track record of working with and developing quarterbacks. So guys that won't start this coming season, but still I think could have a pretty strong impact on the future for both UCF and UNC respectively. Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.